The recently released Fell Xenologue, Wave 4 of the DLC for Fire Emblem Engage, packs quite the punch in terms of its difficulty. With limited deployment slots, nasty enemies, and scaled down player characters, it can be easy to feel overwhelmed by even the very first mission. But worry not, I'm going to provide some advice that should help you tip the scales in your favor. Let's begin. Hello everyone, my name is Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman. If you find this video fun, entertaining, or educational, please subscribe and leave a like. I'm a small-time creator trying to make YouTube my full-time career, and I could use all the help I can get from folks like yourselves. Thank you. As a quick primer, I'm playing the Fell Xenologue on Maddening, and I started it from my current file, which is also on Maddening. As such, all advice I give here should be applicable across all difficulty modes. In the Xenologue, your units have preset classes, stats, and weapons, so you can't just roll up and stomp with your endgame team. Finally, there are a number of force-deployed units in these maps, so, combined with the limited deployment slots available, your ability to customize your team will be limited. Primer done. Tip 1. Check your stats. First things first, it's important to scan the roster to see what classes and stats your team has available, and this is important for every map as you'll level up between maps. As I mentioned previously, the game sets your levels at a specific point, and as far as I can tell, your classes and growths in the normal story have no bearing here. This means that a unit you may have been relying on, like my support Allier build, for example, could be nowhere near as useful as they were before, while a unit you benched or otherwise didn't turn out well may suddenly be ready to rock. This can be good, as it gives you a wider set of tools to pull from when building a team, but it can also hinder you if you are using some more unorthodox builds. Again, like myself. Let's talk about that next. Number 2 is skills, a lifeline of customization. While your stats, equipment, and classes are all locked in stone in the Fell Xenologue, your inherited skills from your story campaign will remain. All of you out there with your meta picks like Cantor and Speed Taker, rejoice! Those tools are still available to you, and they'll surely be a boon. On the flip side, if you, like me, had specific builds in mind that required skills that don't synergize with a character's canon class, then you might find yourself in a bit of a sticky situation. Something like, sword power on Brave Boucheron for his Brave Sword, only for him to be locked to axes in Axe Fighter. Or, as I mentioned previously, my support Allier having Staff Mastery for all those staves that he can't use. It's great. The good news is, if you've been waiting to use some SP to inherit some skills, now's a great time to do so, as you'll have a better idea of what will and won't work in the Xenologue now that it's in our hands. Also, if you have any spare SP books laying around, potentially from utilizing the well, you could try to patch up your characters with bad skills for their current class by giving them at least something that will work better. Either way, skills will be a huge help here, and alongside our next point, can ease your strategy building significantly. Number 3, pump those bond levels up. Bond levels, and your emblem rings as a whole, are the other resource that follows you over into the DLC from the base game. Ideally, this means that you'll actually wait until you regain access to all the rings and have cleared all the divine paralogs before you start, but let's be honest, most of us aren't going to do that unless you're doing a completed file. That said, even just having some rings will be a huge boon. It goes without saying that your engaged attacks and skills are just as good as ever, but possibly even more important is the bonus stats that you get from bond levels. The enemies in Maddening are nasty in this DLC, so those bonus stats will make all the difference in the world. For example, at bond level 18 with Hector, my Louis gets a whopping 3 build, 4 strength, and 5 defense just for wearing a damn ring, making tanking wolves and 1 rounding on the counterattack a breeze. So long as you have extra bond fragments laying around, and you really should, unless you're power leveling every emblem you get to max rank, then you can figure out what characters are going to be wielding what emblems, and if they aren't maxed already, go level up those bonds. You can return to the Somniel in the middle of the Fell Xenologue, so you do have that opportunity. And you really should, because it's multiple levels worth of free stats for essentially 0 effort. Like, why would you not? Number 4, trade equipment around. This is a simpler one, but don't forget to move weapons, staves, and healing to the units that you're actually going to use. Intelligent Systems made some truly interesting choices in allocating gear from the armory this time around. For example, What is Tamara gonna do with that steel great lance, IS? Hug it for comfort while she gets mauled to death? No. No, that's a mighty weapon that belongs in the hands of someone who can tame it. Someone like my friend and yours, Louis. Similarly, I'm sure Celine loves her Levin sword, but I'd much prefer it to be in Kagetsu's capable hands, so he actually has a ranged option for mopping up enemies and getting more backup attacks. Also, there's really no reason not to fill any open inventory slots with vulneraries. With the amount of damage that gets thrown around and the limited deployment options, you may not always have a healer handy to patch someone up. Stay stocked with potions, though, and you'll be better equipped to handle things. Number 5, Nil, a true combat failure. When they said that Nil is bad at combat, they really meant it, man. Any attempts to put Nil in combat are nigh guaranteed to cost you a rewind charge, so don't even bother. I'd rather have Vander on board, since he at least has mobility. Except for the fact that Nil does have one redeeming feature going for him. He is still a dragon. While his combat stats are atrocious, Nil gets all the same bonuses to emblem abilities that Nell and Allier do, making him a fantastic support unit with certain emblems. I, for one, think Byleth suits him the most, as you can dance 4 units simultaneously, no matter how bad your stats are, and the dragon buff to Instruct grants a huge +3 to every stat for every allied unit in a 2-square range. As I mentioned in our point about bond levels, extra stats are a game changer in the Maddening DLC, and if Nil can at least buff the rest of the team, he won't feel like quite as much of a cinder block tied to their feet. Again, just remember to keep him away from combat, or he'll be the one being taken to school for some remedial derriere devastation. Number 6, Corrupted Wolves still attack max defense characters. It's a well-known fact that Engage's AI gets a bit of a bump in Maddening mode, causing it to avoid attacking units it has 0 chance of hitting due to high avoid, or against whom they can't deal any damage due to the target's defense or resistance. However, the Corrupted Wolves of the Fell Xenologue have a different set of behaviors, and I know why. You see, the wolves have a nasty curse attached to their attacks that causes an attacked unit to lose 5 max HP after they're hit in combat with a wolf, so long as the wolf in question survives the encounter. This debuff is applied even if the attack doesn't actually deal any damage, allowing them to whittle down even the tankiest characters and making them vulnerable to what little damage they do actually eventually take. Because of this, the wolves will attack anything they can hit, attempting to curse you. However, knowing this means that we can take advantage of it. Enter a tank, Louis comes to mind, paired with everyone's favorite armored berserker, Hector. With a bond level of 18, Louis was completely immune to our lupine friends' attacks, shrugging them off in style. When engaged, he would then counterattack with Quick Riposte, and thanks to his big attack and the power of Hector's engage weapons, he would deal devastating damage to his foes. If he slew them outright, he would avoid the debuff entirely. If he didn't, his massive health pool ensured that he didn't immediately fall into the danger zone. Also, while max health damage is still technically damage, you're still at quote-unquote max health in the eyes of the game if you've taken no other hits. This means that something like Quick Riposte, which activates so long as you have 60% or more of your HP, will always activate. Whether your bar says 5 of 5 HP remaining or 50 of 50, it doesn't care, and Quick Riposte will activate anyway. How's that for a cherry on top? And number 7, Emblem Veronica, the key to victory. Speaking of wolves and their curses, let's talk about our last point, why Emblem Veronica was essentially custom built to invalidate the first map of the Fell Xenologue. First off, nothing quite says power like taking the very limited 5 deployment slot limit, further narrowed down to 2 thanks to 3 whopping force deployed units, and saying, but what if it was 6? Veronica's ability to summon another unit for you to make use of is massively helpful in such a constrained environment. This map would be trivial with just a few extra bodies for you to throw around, and even if you get a 3-star unit with your summon, that's still another blocker for you. And let's be honest, I mean, even a 3-star will still be a better unit than nil. If you happen to get a 5-star instead, oh boy howdy, that's a good time. I chose to put Veronica on my Allier, as she's been his go-to emblem thanks to the support build that I've been running on him. Their maxed bond level means that I had 4 whole turns to play with my newly summoned friend, which is the majority of the map's duration if things are going well. If your Allier takes a more combat-focused role, you could also put Veronica on nil to similar effect. However, there's another reason that I chose to keep Veronica on Allier, and it has to do with a certain bond weapon she gets, or rather, bond staff. After the first turn of battle, Nil not so helpfully offers to give you his restore staff, which he can't even use for some godforsaken reason, so that you can remove the wolf's curse from your units. If you don't have a unit that can wield this staff, maybe because you wanted to bring extra combat units instead of a healer, you're in for a bad time, as the debuffs stack up and your HP ticks down. But that's where Veronica comes in. Veronica's second engage quote-unquote weapon is a Fortify Plus staff, which has the wild effect of healing all allies in a 7 square radius and also removes all status effects that are currently afflicting them. No longer do you need to fear the bite of the wolf, my friends. For 4 whole turns, you can keep your whole team hale and hearty, letting you focus on slaying out and making your way towards the boss. And guess what? If you run out of engage meter, there's still a little more healing and summoning to do. Well, there's a handy engage puddle right near where you spawn. Seems that should probably go to Veronica, don't you think? And there you go, folks. 7 tips to hopefully help smooth your intro to what is a rather nasty DLC when you're playing on Maddening. I hope you had fun with this one. I sure did. If there's more to cover as part of the Xenologue, I will absolutely do so make sure you're subbed to catch it. Also, if you have any pressing questions about the game, or you're just stuck and need help, strike up a conversation in the comments, or consider joining the Discord so I and others can help. With all that said, though, my name has been Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman. I hope you all have a good night. Stay safe and healthy out there. And remember, be good to each other. Bye now.